First, I want to thank everyone for being here and taking the time out of dinner time to join us tonight. We are so excited to have Carrie Chapman with us. So, Carrie is owner of Pet Wants Minneapolis with her husband, Tim. They've been longtime owners with us. So, 10 years they've been owners with us. So, tonight is really a time for us to, or for me to ask Carrie some questions that you guys may benefit from in your exploration of Pet One. So thank you so much for joining us, Carrie. I'm so excited that you are here. Okay, so let's get started. So, Carrie, tell the group just a little bit about yourself. Who were you before Pet One?
Yeah, so 10 years ago. So prior to Pet Once, I actually spent my whole career at Target stores. So basically, think starting as a team member, and I worked my way up. So I did everything from hourly manager to running a store to running a group of stores. So in my last position, I was running 62 stores across the Midwest, across 5 different states. So all retail, all my life, including Pet Once.
And so in corporate, right? You were in corporate at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So most of my career was spent running retail stores.
Okay.
But I also did some operational. I kind of did the back and forth between some, as you kind of go up and move, they kind of help bring you back into operational positions, running sales floor or supporting remodel stores. And so I got to do a little bit of back and forth.
Okay. And so tell me, how did you come to find Pet Once?
So after I left Target and for, just personal reasons and my family and my husband and I were searching for our own business and we looked at a bunch of franchises. And so Pet Once was one that came along and it was the one that generated the most excitement between the two of us.
And so was business ownership always something that you guys wanted to do? Was that kind of a lifelong dream for you guys?
So it certainly was for my husband, always kind of his lifelong goal. I guess I hadn't thought about it up until kind of the point where we were like, we really would enjoy working for ourselves and not being in a corporate environment anymore. So that it was a little bit newer for me, but for him, it had always been his dream. Yeah.
Oh, good. That's great to hear. And so then tell me a little bit about your fears of being an entrepreneur, right? Because I think that's everyone's fears when they're leaving a corporate job or even, just a job in general and opening up their own business. So tell me a little bit about what fears you had during that time.
Yeah, I think probably as I think back to it, the biggest fear is always the unknown. But just to pinpoint that more, I would say the unknown of like your financial future. So for us, um, when we started our business, we were dependent on our business for our income. We didn't have neither one of us. We were all in 100%, both of us the whole time. So it was the fear is really not knowing what to expect. You're making projections, you're putting money out, but you don't know what your return is. You're just you're hoping and you think you're doing the right things, but you don't know. So you're in an unknown state for a while.
Yeah. And so what ultimately pushed you over the line to say, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. I'm all in. Let's do it.
So for us, we had looked at several different businesses and franchises, and I think what pushed us over the edge was we really believed in the brand, we believed in the product, we believed in the original founder and her mission. Um, and having had just the retail background, we kind of knew the future of where things were headed, and it just felt like it always makes sense. We knew that at Target, the pet segment was always on fire in terms of year-over-year sales, and it was recession proof. So it made a lot of sense to us. Like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. We know retail, we know the pet industry is booming, and it is giving us an opportunity. I think one of the most attractive things to us is it was our business and not being handed a playbook. And not that you don't have that support in a franchise, but when you're in a corporate situation, you get very much a playbook. You get held accountable every single day, day in and day out. Somebody's looking at your metrics and, visiting your store. So this is a bit different of an environment. So that was kind of exciting to us that we got to have a little bit of our own kind of input on how we ran things day to day.
Yeah. That's really good. And so I know that Tim wanted to be a business owner. You really hadn't thought about it, but there was a dynamic there with decision making, right? As there is with any couple or partners. So tell me a little bit about the decision making. Were you both on the same page and were like, "Hey, let's go," or did you have to convince him, or did he have to convince you? What did that look like?
Yeah, I think, we were both kind of in. Once we had done the Meet the Pack and had really learned about the brand and more all in, and we had done enough research on other business options, I think we were both ready to go. We were both ready to make the leap into entrepreneurship and to be on our own and take that risk. And we knew that the benefits and what we would enjoy every day would outweigh the risk and the benefits, and we were ready for it. And yeah, it was, we were both ready.
Good. And so then you go and you tell friends and family, right? And everyone has an opinion about that. So how did that work out when you told your friends and family that you guys were gonna, quit your comfy jobs and start this business?
Yeah, so we actually didn't, everybody, all our friends and for family were 100% super supportive because they knew our retail background. They also, after you kind of talk people through, right, like where the pet industry has been. And I think there's just this widely known how much people love their pets and treat them like children. And so there's just an automatic, like people understand it. Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a lot of support.
Good, good. So talk to us a little bit about your day to day. So what does a typical week for you look like as a Pet Once owner?
Yeah, so it can vary a little bit week to week because we do a lot of events. So when we're getting out in our community and supporting our community, so so that can take up on weekends. And on the weekends primarily, and we do like two kind of big events a month. And that's when you're out in your community, you're meeting people. So those days are 100% committed to that and and to talking about your brand and what you do. Um, the more Monday through Friday, Monday is kind of that first thing you're always looking at is, you know, taking care of your customer. So whether it be phone calls, deliveries, shipping orders, staffing, your event or your store, um, that's always our first priority every single day, no matter what. But other things that kind of take our week to week are, you're ordering inventory, you're managing your books, you're doing your finances, you're looking at your marketing plan. So there's these small buckets every day, and having like a good routine around them has really worked for us to know, okay, well, Tuesday's going to be kind of my ordering day and catching up. And, Mondays and Thursdays are, kind of the order delivery picking days. And so we've kind of made those routines for ourselves, as well as kind of broke out the responsibilities between my husband and I based on our strengths, which has helped us a lot, kind of just manage all the different components of a business.
Yeah. And so what surprised you the most about Pet Ones? Because obviously when you're in the discovery phase and you're thinking about owning a business, you have no idea what it's going to be like, right? And then you own the business. So what surprised you the most once you actually owned the business and started running it?
Um, I think our biggest surprise was realizing that customers don't come as quick as you think they're going to when you
Mhm.
first start off. You think just there's going to be like this rush and it's going to, you're going to build your sales based on, your numbers that you've kind of put in there. And you slowly realize in the beginning that it's a slower grow than what you think it's going to be initially. Um, but you're also, you're building a plan kind of on not a lot of knowledge, right? Because it's our first time through this. So I think that was probably our biggest, like, oh, okay. All right. We didn't realize that was going to happen. We didn't realize the progression of how that was going to happen.
Good. And so then what do you love about Pet Ones? Like what gets you out of bed in the morning and gets you excited?
So absolutely, it's always talking to customers. It is, and it's specifically about like how you change their lives. So for instance, I mean, I can think of 100 examples, but there's, one of the most recent ones is we had a customer come to us and say she was ready to thinking about putting her dog down because he had a spinal condition. He was a German Shepherd. Um, and he wasn't doing well. And I talked to her about a couple of different products we carry. that might be able to help in the situation that she's in. And she called me about 2 weeks later and like thanked us for saving her dog, that she was not considering that anymore, that he was walking around, he was able to jump, he was able to go, and we just extended his life. And it gives you goosebumps when you hear those stories because you know how much a pet means to someone. It's their child, it's their baby. And when you can extend that time for them, it's that's what gets you out of bed every day.
Yeah, definitely. And so, on the flip side of that, what would you say is the hardest part about owning a pet once?
I would say it's probably the hardest thing about owning any business, but it's the unknown of what your paycheck is going to be. I think that is, um, you just got to go into it being prepared and knowing that you're going to put money into your business, for a certain amount of time, but eventually it's going to pay off and you're going to get paid out of it. And, after years and years of doing it, you realize that what you can count on for sales and income. But it's that biggest challenge is definitely that beginning time period. Because I've always said there's no way to describe until you've actually done it when you see all your money going out, but not as much coming in. Like there's just no way to describe that feeling until you're in it. You're doing the right thing. You know it's going to come back, but it can be a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little different than getting a check every 2 weeks from your employer, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so how has it changed your personal life, your schedule, your lifestyle? Tell me a little bit just about business ownership and what that's done for you and Tim.
Yeah, so for us, there are things, there's pros and cons to everything. It's one of the most like likable things about this schedule is just the freedom that it brings of having your own business. The freedom to be able to, do a little bit of work in the morning and then maybe you have to go take care of something in the, later morning and then you work a little bit in the afternoon and there's a lot of freedom in it, I would say. Majority of the time. For us, there are times where we have to be, committed to our business, but I would say majority of our time there's so much freedom to be able to come and go and, do things at your own pace, at your own schedule as you need to, which is the biggest absolute enjoyment of having a business, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the early days, right? I know this is going to take you back a while because you've been an owner for quite some time, but how did you like what would you say was your biggest challenge during the early days? And then how did you kind of get through that?
Yeah, I think so. Actually, I was talking to my husband about this today because I'm like, okay, let's think about this. And it's really about just the growth and how just the trajectory of how quickly we got to where we wanted to go. And it was for us, it was slower in the beginning. Um, and how we dealt with that is we actually, kind of thinking back to our target days and strategic and how we would handle, plans is we actually would remove ourselves from our business and go somewhere quiet every quarter and we would sit down and do a business review, just the two of us. And we would look at like what are our goals, what are our objectives, what are we doing, what are our results, what do we need to do different? And that really just doing that continuously quarter after quarter and annually really helped us continue to build and get better all the time and be able to shift because there are times when you're going to make a decision where you think one thing is going to happen but it doesn't, so then you got to shift your plan and realize, all right, I tried that, it didn't work, what's plan B and how are we going to overcome that in order to meet our goals. So that is definitely a bit, yeah. But
Yeah. And so if you were starting over today, knowing what you know now, would you have changed anything? Would you have done anything differently?
yeah, I think there's a lot of things I know, now that I probably would do differently. I probably in the beginning, I probably would have done more networking as much as that's not my thing that I love doing, knowing that that probably would have paid off longer term because those things kind of came naturally over the years. Had they come earlier in our business, I think it would have just like amplified our sales. Um, so that's probably one thing. The other one would have been probably taking a little bit bigger risk in our inventory selection early on. Um, and because in retail, the first time somebody sees you or a restaurant experience, the first time somebody sees you is that's what they see of you. And that's what they're going to remember. And so if we would have presented a little bit, wider inventory selection, now this was 10 years ago, so it was a much different model than what it is now. Um, I think it probably would have fruited different results.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good insight. And so, people that are kind of looking at this opportunity right now, obviously they have a fear. They've never owned a business before, don't know what to expect, worry that their skills don't necessarily translate. And part of this business, right, has a little bit of a sales aspect of it. You're selling yourself and you're selling the brand. And I know you don't have sales experience. So did that intimidate you at all, or did any of your fears really kind of play out in reality that you thought would happen?
I think the fear of selling probably did play out in reality early on in the beginning where I was uncomfortable with it. Um, until I realized what my personal take was on it. And my personal take was, I'm not selling to you if I educate you on what might be the best option for your pet and what we can offer you. And if I position myself to educate you as a consumer so you can make the best decision for your pet in your situation, then I've done what I think I need to do. And over the years, what that turned into was our customers trust us. They trust us to give advice because we're not selling per se. We're giving them really good advice and you're building a relationship because this is a relationship business. They have to trust you with what you're telling them. So that was it in my mind, I think it was just like a play on words, right? Like I kind of needed to shift it because you really are selling. But if I tell myself I'm educating people, I feel better about it internally. I think it's a personal thing.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. And so, as far as, because obviously you guys didn't own a business before, talk a little bit about what Pet Wants provided you with training and just helping you kind of get to that point where you felt comfortable to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, there was a lot of coaching along the way and a lot of resources. And whatever I guess even anything along the way, there was someone that could help answer a question for us and either provide an answer with coaching or with marketing, or with, how do you find, your warehouse, or what do you do for vehicles, or where's the best place for your wrap? There was always someone to help guide us in the right direction, either give us an answer or at least guide us in the right direction of where we needed to go. And throughout the years, that just continued along every step of the business. Um, you tend to need a lot more in the beginning and, just simple things. There's, when, I mean, we joke all the time, my husband and I did in the beginning, we had jobs where we had admins and prior, and now we would look at each other and we're like, well, who's going to do the Excel spreadsheet? Because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. So we would joke about that back and forth, but there was always a resource of somebody like, well, how do you do this? Or help me walk through this. Or, so there was, we always got the answers we needed along the way with whatever it was.
Yeah. And I think one of the great benefits of owning a franchise is the network of other owners,
Mm.
right? So, talk a little bit about that because if you go out and you buy, John Smith's business down the road, you don't get that network. But with the franchise, you get a whole network of people that are going through the same thing that you're going through on a daily basis. So, talk to me a little bit about what that network means to you and what it's meant to you over the years and how that network has supported you.
Yeah, sometimes some of your best answers come from the network that we're in. I'm glad you brought that up. In fact, one of the owners that I went through training with is now a lifelong friend, and we end up vacationing together. So we've not, and it's someone who I can text at any time of the day with any problem in my business and say, "What are you doing here? What is this again? Remind me." Or "How do I do this?" Or "What's the best decision?" Um, so one-on-one, the people we met in training, we kind of got locked with, right? Like you just develop a natural relationship with them over time. But we also had the network of the larger, so going to meetings or whether it was a Facebook chat group or however we got connected with people. I knew that there was always a resource. If I had a question, I probably have 5 or 6 owners I have on speed dial, right? That I can just text at any time and say, "What are you doing here? Remind me what to do," or "What's this nutrition question? I'm not sure how to answer it." or even put it, in our Facebook chat group, to be able to ask a question. I know I'll get a response like within 5 minutes. And so there's a lot of security in that too, especially when you're working with customers and trying to get them answers or nutrition questions or ingredient questions. Um, it gave you a lot of comfort knowing you had a network of resources to be able to answer questions.
Yeah, that's great. I think our owners are so great and such a great network of owners. So thank you for talking on. So you alluded to the financial risk in the beginning, and a lot of people have that fear. That's probably our number one common fear is the financial risk, taking on debt, leaving a steady paycheck. What if it doesn't work? That kind of, all those fears that play in your head when you lay awake at night. And so, how did you kind of get through that fear? And looking back and, in hindsight, would you have done anything differently?
Um, how we got through that fear probably was just it's the going back to the logical side of the planning and the looking at your increases and knowing it's coming and making a shift when things weren't going as fast as you wanted it to be able to bring in more income and utilizing your resources. Um, I think we realized we didn't have all the answers and we needed to use our resources. So whether that was the Pet Wants brand team with coaches or whether that was other owners, but as I look back, I probably reached out far more being an entrepreneur ever than I did in my previous career. And I probably should have been doing that earlier. That's a little self-reflection, right? I probably would have learned more. But I'm glad I took advantage of reaching out and asking other people how they were getting through it because you not only learn answers to what you need to do, but you also hear their story and their success, and there's comfort in that. So who else is having success with it? They're making a living, they're living on it. So that's a real life example that you can lean on and look back and go, all right, here's my business. This is where I'm going. Well, how are they doing in their business? And they're doing well. So I know I'm going to get there. So there's some comfort in just in seeing other people's stories.
Yeah, yeah. And so what do you think is one thing that you wish someone would have told you before you signed on?
That it's scary. That's just in the beginning. That's all. I mean, other than that, everything else, I think, I don't know. That would probably be the one thing that I would say that I don't think I was ready for the emotional feeling of what it would be like being a
Yeah,
business owner. Yeah, it's a unique feeling. It's liberating, but it's also scary sometimes, and it's okay because
yeah.
it all works out. It just takes time.
Yeah. And so a lot of people, they sit on these decisions for a long time and they're like Tim, right? They dream of owning their own business and being an entrepreneur and not reporting to someone else. But the fear just kind of keeps them on the fence. So what would you say to someone that is on the fence, that has put this opportunity off and that, has allowed their fear to kind of make that decision for them?
Yeah, I think there's factors that you consider about why you want to do this and if it's right for you. And if you believe after thinking through, the personally, the financial, that it is right for you and it's really what you want to do, it's all about taking a leap of faith, but taking an educated leap of faith, right? And going into it with your eyes wide open, knowing I'm not going to be profitable in the first year. I know I'm going to be handing out money and I'm not going to be getting it back. Not that year, and just being realistic about that, I think going in. Um, but boy, if there is, something that we look back on and say, after being in corporate all of our lives, I mean, we both worked Target corporate. My husband was at Target too. I mean, we have 55 years between the two of us. To have the liberation of not working for someone and working for yourself, um, I'm really glad I experienced it because there's a joy to that you built something personally that you don't get from working for somebody else.
Yeah, it really does change your life in the most positive way. Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about markets, right? Because with our model, we have a two-phase model. So the mobile part is where you're out in the community doing your markets, and then, eventually you open up your retail space. So that market time is really important. And you guys have just excelled in that. You guys do such a good job with markets. So talk a little bit about markets. How difficult do you think they are to get them? What do you think the importance of them are? Just talk to me a little bit about them.
So, importance wise, I would put them as one of the most important things you can do in being a part of your community and building your brand. Because you're not only building the Pet Wants brand, but you're building who your personal business brand is. We started off with our events just always, my husband and I, we're the face of our brand. We want our customers to know that when they come and talk to us, they're talking to the owners. Like we're going to be there for them. You're going to get that kind of service. Um, but then, looking at events, we've always thought of events are our store. So it's not just you're not just setting up your business. You're literally setting up your store where you're at. So you better present yourself in a way that is like if you were having a grand opening almost every single time you have an event. So, you want to have your products, you want to have it look good, but then we have to do our part in the customer service side and how you interact with people, smile, welcome them, thank them for stopping. Like we have always made it a point to be incredibly gracious and to always try and thank the event organizer because they don't get a lot of thanks. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate being here. We're really grateful that you have us. You're allowing us to be at your event today, but then being gracious to your customers. Thanks for, even if, they don't buy anything, but they might one day, they might come back to you just saying, thanks for stopping. Good to see you. Remembering people, that customer and just people in general interaction plays off in so many ways long term for you and your brand and what you're building across your community because people talk. And so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, your reputation will definitely speak for you, right? And you guys have done a great job at that. You guys have really excelled with that. So, um, okay. So thank you so much for your candor and for sharing everything with the team. I'd like to open it up for Q&A. So this, you can ask Carrie any questions that you have on your mind.
Well, I'll chime in.
Okay.
I'm very curious. Did you start your brick and mortar with the intention of taking on other territories? Was that something that you had an idea of? Because right now, the prospects that I have, we have a brick and mortar in an established territory, and then we have three additional territories. And they all kind of touch each other. They're in weird shapes and spaces. Um, but what I really want to know is how best to reach that next territory, to spread myself out as far as I possibly can with the markets, and then eventually make my way to the brick and mortar for each of those particular territories. But do you have more than one territory? Is that something you'd ever looked at?
So we're a little bit unique too, and Angela can speak, can jump in here. We're a little bit unique. We do not have a brick and mortar location because 10 years
Oh,
ago that wasn't part of the model. And so
wow.
it was an option. You could choose either way. And we chose to stay mobile over the years.
Okay, so you just do like e-commerce shipping. All right. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
so
completely different.
hence why events needed to be, right,
Big deal.
a big deal part of our
Yeah.
business. And we're in Minneapolis. And so they were in our term period, think 5, 6 years ago, right? COVID and some other things.
Mhm.
We had a lot of uniquenesses in our,
Yeah.
so we did actually look at opening a brick and mortar location and we're very serious. And it was right before COVID happened and life
Yeah.
changed for everybody. And
Yeah.
so that took us on a different trajectory. Yeah.
Okay, so you still don't have any interest in spreading that way, but it works for you. So, I mean, why do anything different at this point?
Yeah, so Carrie and Tim are actually in the process of selling their business, and Carrie is going to come work for us at corporate.
Oh, and
So,
corporate.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it just speaks volumes of, owners staying with the brand, loving the brand, wanting to be part of the brand. So we're so excited to have Carrie on our team. But yeah, when we first started our brand 10 years ago, it was only mobile. So everyone was only mobile. And then we started incorporating the retail and the grooming about 4 years ago. And so to Carrie's point, if they were already mobile, they got to stay mobile. So they didn't, get to open up a retail store, but
Yeah.
our new owners now do.
Just means I need to network more so I can talk to
Yeah.
people about their brick and mortars and multiple territories.
Yeah. 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 There's definitely, as I look back, like it's, hard to sum up for us, but as I look back, like I wish we wouldn't have had kind of that, those worldwide events, right? That kind of change things because I think we would have done really well in a store.
Yeah.
And I think it would have gone over really well with the brand reputation that, it just, it's sad that it worked out that way, but who can control a worldwide pandemic? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And we don't expect one again for another like 30 or
right.
40
I
years.
think we're good now. Yeah, we've done that. So,
Well, thank you and congratulations. That's really
yeah,
an accomplishment to sell your business and then go, all right, I'll stay.
yeah, yeah. That it just proves, right? Like I love the brand, so
I
it's a great place to be.
That is what I've heard over and over and over. Every meeting, meet the pack, every call that I've had, I've talked to two different Jerrys, a Joe. There's been so many people, and they're all obsessed with the brand and Pet Wants and the people that work there. And you'll become one of the names that they talk about a lot, I'm sure.
Hey, Carrie, I had a question just about, I guess, your early days too, and your trajectory, your hiring plan, and kind of, it sounds like it was just you and your husband in the beginning doing everything, yourself. And were you guys also doing the grooming, or did you immediately hire, groomer? I think I was just muted there.
Sorry,
Um,
it's muting.
is that okay?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Sorry about that, George.
There's no worries. But yeah, I guess, could you talk about how you hired out of the gate and how, just let's say over the first year or two, what that looked like in terms of scaling? Did you go from zero groomers to two, then four, or multiple vans and that sort of thing, and just that whole scaling aspect?
Okay, so what I can talk about, so we don't have, so this is again where we're a little bit different, right? Because we started 10 years ago. So I don't have grooming and I don't have a retail location. We have the mobile model, but I can tell you how we scaled initially for us. Um, and we ended up bringing on a couple of part-time people fairly early on, to help with deliveries and with marketing and just our website management for us. And how that helped us was it freed us up to think more about our business in different ways, right? And to be always constantly kind of reviewing where we're at and be able to kind of scale in a way that we could, make the income that we wanted to make. And so we were lucky enough to hire people who wanted to work but didn't need to work. And so they were very flexible in their hours and were very committed to their job because they wanted to be there. They were friends of ours or neighbors or acquaintances in some way. They were really committed to the job and doing it well. They didn't necessarily need to do it for the money. And so when we needed help for us early on, sometimes you don't know when you need help in your schedules. You might need a little bit more help on a weekday than you intended. They were really flexible with us with their schedule versus sticking to a routine schedule every week. And that in the early parts of our business, when we didn't understand, exactly how growth was going to happen and couldn't project it, that's super beneficial to being able to kind of manage things day to day.
Okay, and so your model, I guess I was assuming that the mobile included an aspect of grooming as well, but it sounds like it didn't. So it's basically been your whole business model has been really the product resale. Is that correct?
Hmm.
Okay, and that's amazing. And then what share of that would you say is e-commerce versus direct?
Yeah, so we're about 60% e-commerce. So
Okay,
60% delivery. Yep.
and e-commerce is the e-commerce constrained to the same territory, or is it broader?
Um, it is sometimes it goes outside if it's unowned. But
Mhm.
yeah, so sometimes it can go outside if it's unknown, just because of people show up at an event, and they want to order from Pet Wants. And there isn't a Pet Wants near them, another location. Like in the Twin Cities, there's only two locations here, and we're 45 miles apart. So there's a lot of open territory and space. So if we're at a convention center in Minneapolis, which is our own territory, and somebody wants to buy from Pet Wants in the future, just as an ambassador of the brand, we didn't, we always were like, all right, we'll deliver it because we wanted them to have a great experience.
Okay, so the 40% that's not e-commerce, that's those sales, those transactions take place as at events mainly, since there's no brick and
Mhm.
mortar. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Wow.
Which was our mainstay and the great way to build your database for your customers to be able to market to long term. So that's just like a constant flow of new data, new customers.
Okay. And I don't know if this is a question for you or for, the Meet the Pack, but I guess just in general, so that to be able to build the business solely on retail sales and obviously coming from Target too, I guess the margins are important or extra important in this case when that's the sole source of revenue. What on average would you say was the margins on retail sale to be able to sustain that only?
So our margins, so in general, we were well over 55%, when it came to it, when across the board over everything.
Okay.
And that's with, I mean, I know so when I say we're the mobile model still, we still have 500 SKUs in our mobile. So like we're still, when we set up, it's a store
Mhm.
essentially for an event.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
And your food, George, will be your biggest profit center. That'll be your biggest margin leader. And so you get to set the prices of your food, which is another great thing.
Mhm.
We give you some guidance on where you should price it, but ultimately you get to set the price.
Okay. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi,
I have a
Carrie.
question.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Me or her?
Go ahead,
I'm
Melissa.
sorry.
Yeah.
Melissa, you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. It might be two questions. So where I live, I'm in Texas, and I'm in the Twin Cities, our area, but my surrounding area is literally country, like population 1,200 to 5,000. So with that being said, I'm like an hour and a half away from Houston area, but I know Houston has three locations. So for marketing and doing those events, I don't even know kind of what my question is. It's just like my thinking is marketing more towards that area, but that a lot of that's kind of already taken. So how would someone like me who's interested really want to market in the beginning?
So Carrie had kind of a unique situation, and I'll let Carrie speak on this, but Carrie went outside of her territory as well, which you can do that if no one owns the territory, right? So you can do markets in other territories as long as no one else owns it. So that could be an option for you, Melissa. Like if you don't have, a lot of people in your, immediate zip codes that you could extend a little bit further.
Yeah. We definitely did, and it wasn't because we wanted to, it was because of the situation we were in. Again, when we started going outside of our territory more was when we had COVID, and then we had, some rioting going on in Minneapolis in our territory, and just it wasn't safe to be in that area. And so we did go outside into some more rural areas where we marketed and we ship to those customers. So we go and do an event and then we ship to them afterwards. And as long as it's unowned, that's okay. And so that's how we've kind of made it work and worked around. The nice thing about, that option, right, is like it gives you more options in any situation. So it allowed us to kind of, manage our business that way. And that we also found that some of those rural areas are some of your best customers because they don't have access to a natural pet store. When you're urban, you tend to have more competition. And so there's some benefit to being rural as well.
Thank you.
Hi, Carrie. Nice to meet you. I wanted to see if you would be comfortable sharing with us at what point you became profitable and whether the startup costs and the ongoing fees with Pet Wants was kind of in line with what you initially expected.
Yeah, our startup costs and initial fees were absolutely what we expected. We didn't really run into anything that wasn't expected, versus what was laid out. It was that was part of the attraction is because it is a little bit lower entry fee, right? So like, versus buying a Dunkin' Donuts or a McDonald's, like, so there's quite a bit less. We didn't run into anything unexpected along the way financially that way. Um, and profit wise, I would say where we felt we started to see a little bit of profit like into like a year and a half. But after year 2 to 3 is when we started to feel a lot more comfortable with profit. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And then my second question also would be, you mentioned that you really bonded with other franchisees that you went through training with in a specific market, and I don't know if they've shared any of this with you, or in a state where you have multiple different stores and the market is a little bit more saturated. Does it feel like the Pet Wants franchisees are competition at that point, or is there still a lot of collaboration going on?
I'd say there's more collaboration. I think the owners realize that what is good for the brand is good for everyone. And when you build the brand and you work together, in your community to be able to support the brand, everybody wins from that. So I feel really good about that. Because I know a lot of the saturated areas, I know a lot of, over the years going to conferences, once a year, like you get to know people, right? And there's a really nice camaraderie amongst owners. And, it even comes down to simple things like, you might be out of a product and you ask your neighbor, like, can you help me? Do you have any? So we share products back and forth too. And that's consistent across the US with owners helping each other out.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Hi, good. I have a question. It's in reference more so to the territories. So we're in a community where it's a beach community and it's, seasonal, essentially. So if we did much of our marketing during that season and then the people leave and go to their respective places, that are outside of our territory. How does that work then with the, I guess, selling within your territory or outside of your territory? Because I'm spending all of that time and energy marketing, and then I could potentially not be able to continue to work with those people if they then go back to a different territory. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you would have the option to, as long as those people, when they leave and go back, that they're on an unknown territory, you have the option to be able to ship to them. If they're in an owned territory in their other address, you would basically what we've done, and because we have customers that live in Minnesota, but they winter in Arizona. And so what they do is they order from us for half the year when they're in Minnesota, and then we've connected them with another Pet Wants franchise owner in Arizona, and they just go back and forth between the two of us. So when they're in Minnesota, they order from us, and when they're in Arizona and they're in the other person's own territory, they order from them.
So you're splitting the profit or you're just losing then that profit for that half a year?
It's not necessarily losing profit. It's just that customer is living somewhere else. And so you're getting 6 months out of the year or whatever orders that they're placing with you when they're in your area.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Just have a question about, since you obviously built the business on, I guess, events and knowing, you've learned a lot, I'm sure, about which events get the greatest return. What would your advice be on that as far as what you found early on or what you found overall as far as what events were ideal for generating sales?
Yeah.
Worth the, obviously some events cost a lot of money to join, festivals, that sort of thing, but biggest return on investment, would you say, for in your experience?
Yeah, so we've done everything from small farmers markets up to events, where there's 150,000 people at them. Um, I would say, when you're building, and this is just, from knowing a lot of people in Pet Wants too, like when you're trying to get foot traffic into your store, a lot of your local markets can be better for that. because you're part of your community, you're building on your community, you're a small business in the community, and so you're getting that foot traffic. So when you're talking like to online conversion, to getting them to your website early on and collecting kind of like how many people's information can I collect and market to them, and can they join my loyalty program? Any event that has a good amount of people coming to it is going to be great, because those people all have dogs and cats. And so there's no event that you're ever like, you just need people to be there. And so just depending on what that is, like we've done, I know owners that have done tattoo festivals. We've done home and garden shows, RV shows, sport shows. Um, we've done a ton of different types of events, food truck festivals, where there's just a lot of people and we might be the one pet vendor there. And it's worked out for us really well. The main point that we always looked at with events is, how do we help educate them about what we do, but then how do I convert them to being our customer? So for us, it was about getting them to our website and being able to market to them afterwards, because you don't want that event to just be a one-time event. You want to be able to bring those customers with you in your long-term business.
Yeah, thank you. That makes sense. And the website, is it a subdomain of Pet Wants, or is it a standalone website, or how did that go about as far as building your website and I guess your website, is it found through the Pet Wants, let's say main
Yeah, so
domain?
if you went to petwants.com, you could put in your zip code and it would list out the locations that are closest to you. So it has a locator system, and then it brings up each location. So like if you went to and put in, petwants.com, and you put in a Minneapolis zip code, you would see a picture of my husband and I come up with our business because we would be the closest business to there. And then you would see other locations also come out, but those would be further.
Okay. So they obviously, if you're handing out business cards at the festivals, they might have a direct link or nowadays a QR code or
Yep.
whatever to your website.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, so we have our own website too. We're petwantsminneapolis.com. So I can, yeah, market that way directly to our
Oh,
customers.
so it's an independent domain. Okay.
Terminology, I'm not, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But no, that makes
Yes,
sense. Thank you.
yes, you'd have your own website. Yes,
Okay. So, okay. Not just a subdomain under petwants.com.
correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
It's me again, Orchidea. Hi. In terms of the food, do you find, I mean, I know earlier you were talking about, educating became kind of selling for you by educating your audience or customers. Do you find that you are already attracting um, a certain market, I guess, that is looking for better options for their pets and wanting to know what else is out there? Or do you really feel like you spent a lot of time educating why the kibble specifically is better than potentially other kibbles on the market?
There's a good amount of educating that goes on. I'd say there's two things that draw people in typically. One is they have their pet is dealing with some kind of ailment. So, it's typically allergies or something else that's going on, which leads to a food conversation because everything starts in the gut, right? Um, the other one is people see our chew bar and all the excitement of like what we sell, and it looks like a doggy buffet. We joke about that because when we're set up an event, you will literally see their dogs like pulling their owners over because they can smell it, and you will see them pull their owners over to the booth, and a lot of times they don't even know where they're like, why is he pulling me? And then they figure out, oh, now I get it. Okay, now I understand. So those are kind of the two main draws. So we always have, signing and that, talks about like, do you need help with allergies? Is your dog itchy? Or, is your dog, hip and joint? Or, just kind of some key call outs on things that are just kind of common things that people are dealing with so that they know that we're a resource to help educate them and give them options of what's best for their pet. And that's when you kind of talk about whether it's supplements or the food or, and giving like all the recommendations. The first question I always ask somebody whenever there's an ailment is tell me what your pet is eating. And we always start there. So it always leads to that kind of conversation because you have to know kind of the base of where you're starting with your customers.
Okay, thank you.
Have you seen kind of a follow-up with that, Carrie? Have you seen a shift? Because you've been doing this for 10 years, right? So have you seen a shift with consumers really wanting a more um, healthy option for their dogs and cats now versus even 5 years ago?
Yeah, I would say there's been a pretty big shift, especially just in knowledge of understanding that, you know, what their pet eats affects how long they live, right? And wanting to feed better and do better. And so it's interesting as we've done events kind of in different parts of Minnesota. Um, there's you can definitely tell like when I'm in Northeast Minneapolis, that's a very educated group. They're buying freeze-dried raw. They're buying our, they understand the importance of, you know, fresh food and they understand the importance of good nutrition and what we do with our Pet Wants food. But sometimes like if I go up to Duluth, Minnesota, which is a little bit less like there just isn't as many natural pet store options, there's a lot more education that I do up there. And so it ends up being a lot more of like, okay, let's talk about what you're feeding. Let's talk about what's really in that food. Let's make sure you understand how to read a label and understand why we're different and what we're trying to do to help.
And so to them, how much did Pet Once help you with the training on the nutrition part? Because that is a big part of your day to day, right? So tell me a little bit about how you were trained on the nutrition side to be such
Yeah.
an expert that you are now.
Yeah, and it took time to build. I'm not gonna lie. It takes time to build, but we went through at that time I was in person. I think we went through at least it was like at that time I think it was over 2 days of full nutrition training that we just focused on it. So it was everything from how a gut, the gut works in a cat versus how the gut works in a dog, to exactly why ingredients are important, how to read a label, how to work through all like kind of like just given certain scenarios like here's a dog and here's what they're struggling with and here's what they're eating, what would you recommend? And then you kind of work through that in your groups to kind of problem solve what kind of advice you would give to that customer. That was incredibly helpful. But you always are going to encounter something that you don't know, right? Being a new owner, that's going to happen. So I would always ask Jeff Reku, who is our director of nutrition, like I would send him an email and be like, I don't know how to answer this. And he would pick up the phone and call me and be like, all right, Carrie, here's what you got to do. One of the first things I remember early on was we do a joint supplement called Joint Reliver. And I had a customer come up and say, my dog ate the whole bottle. Are they going to be okay? And I'm panicked because I'm like, I don't know. So who do I reach out to? I reach out to Jeff. Jeff calls me back. Literally, I'm at the event talking to him on my phone, and he's like, Carrie, they're going to be just fine. Don't worry, and walked me all through it. And I was able to tell the customer, like, don't worry about it. It's going to be all right. Here's what you need to do, and have kind of that confidence in what I was saying because of the backup I had.
Okay, well, I would like to thank you so much for your time, Carrie. It was so insightful learning from you and hearing your experience. We are recording this session, so if anyone wants it so that they can share it with a friend, family member, business partner, whoever, please feel free to email me, Esposito at petwants.com, and I will be more than happy to share the recorded version with you. So thank you everyone for your time. Thank you for spending your dinner time with us and thank you for joining.